When you think about a cable channel and its signature game show, you get a lot of answers. For Nickelodeon, it would be Double Dare. For MTV, you get either Remote Control or maybe Singled Out. But when you get to Comedy Central, you get Win Ben Stein's Money. It was the perfect example of a show being smart and also being a smart ass. You got some of the best ratings that the network had at the time, right up there with South Park and The Daily Show being the three standout shows that a lot of viewers were watching in 1997. It was only natural for the channel to use these three shows as blueprints for how they would get big on their network, or at least other shows to be big on their network. One such example, which failed in 1999, was another game show that aped gimmicks from Win Ben Stein's Money, and something from the Games of 90 series that we did years ago. I give you Versus.
Dispose of the bodies later. Right now, it's time for Versus. Tonight, it's the team that likes to dress up in chaps and ride you all night long, if you're a horse, versus the team that doesn't care if they lose today because they'll be back to win in their next life. That's right, it's Cowboys versus Indians on Versus.
Versus was a show that debuted on May 31st of 1999 on Comedy Central. Starring Whose Line Is It Anyway regular Greg Proops, two teams of three that shared a similar bond squared off against each other in a battle of wits to see who would reign supreme for about 30 minutes on a game show. While the concept seems like it could be a good idea, history has told us otherwise, no matter how the quality of the show was handled. Now, this is something I want to do a top 5 on, and that's gimmicks for shows that almost never work. One that is a true contender are the three-of-a-kind teams mechanic. Men versus women is a trope on its own and has had some success. But this show had stuff like soccer moms versus dominatrixes, cops versus hippies, and cowboys versus Indians. Except the Indians more of the Mumbai variety than of the Iroquois variety. There are others that are pretty weird, but you get the general idea. We've seen shows like this in a variety of ways, and almost all of them would be prime candidates for this review category of 26 weeks or less. Speaking of ideas that should work but didn't, here's game show host Greg Proops.
And now, a man with an Oedipal complex the size of the Washington Monument, Greg Proops!
And welcome to Versus. I'm Greg Proops. This is the show where we bring together two rival teams and pit them against one another on our field of mortal intellectual combat.
One of the biggest tropes in game shows is that if X was a great panelist on Y, then X would be great at hosting Z. More often than not, this leads us to some big disasters at a key position. Greg Proops isn't bad at hosting at all, but for a kinda straightforward quiz show, really isn't the best vehicle for him. We've seen Greg be absolutely brilliant on a panelist on Whose Line in both the UK and in the US as the Snarkmeister General that he is. Here on Versus, it's kind of the wrong kind of humor. A show like this needs a drier style of wit and snark for it to work. Greg's style isn't it. His style worked a lot better on a couple other shows that he has done in Rendezvous and Headgame. Apart from that, he did get a decent amount out of a rather format. Speaking of the format, it's rather reminiscent of the big man on campus regards to game shows at the time, Win Ben Stein's Money. In the first round, the teams are shown a subject and two categories with rather funny titles. Exactly like what they would do on Win Ben Stein's Money. The team in control picks one of the categories and Greg would then read the question. The first team to buzz in with the correct answer gets $100. If wrong, then the other team can confer and steal the money. After that, the second category is played with the same rules as before. After about 6 or so groups of categories, the round ends. It's fine, but it just feels like the show is attaching bits and pieces from other shows onto itself. The three-of-a-kind teams have been done before, and that show has to deal with a previous Comedy Central show in Clash, which was on the precursor to Comedy Central in Comedy Network. It was an okay show, but was lacking a lot save from Billy Kimball's solid hosting. Clash had the same rivalry format as Versus, even though that was half-baked and tried to be passed off as satirical. Versus' problem is that it was taking Clash's gimmick and mixing it up with the attempt at humor through the brilliant category writing of Win Ben Stein's Money, although the questions are admittedly a bit easier and it was done a bit better. This is something that the folks over at Win Ben Stein's Money brought up when Greg was brought on to play in a Comedy Central battle.
Very funny man, Greg. Welcome to the show. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but will you have a talk with whoever's right in that versus, the category titles, and tell them to quit stealing our damn bit, will you?
I will do that.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
Round 2 had categories in the same specialties as the teams. Team in control picks a question from either their side for $200, or they could pick a question from their opponent's side, i.e. poach them, for $400. Greg asks the question, and if you get it right, you get the money from the question. If wrong, you lose $200 no matter where you got the question, and the other team can confer and steal the money like in the first round. On first watch, it can be a bit complicated, but it's ran smoothly. Another thing I do like is that there's a set amount of questions in each team's stack, so once it runs out, you're forced to try to poach from the opposing side. Round 3 has each player go head-to-head. Greg would read a statement, and for each statement it would be something that represents one side, represents the other side, or a third answer that's kind of random and kind of hilarious at the same time. It's like this, that, or the other thing on remote control. Each right answer is worth $250, but each wrong answer takes away $250 and the opposing team can steal. Each contestant gets 3 questions per, so a possible $2,250 is available. Team with the most money wins the game, keeps all the cash, and plays the bonus game. Very solid round. I got no complaints whatsoever about this one. The final round for the show is really tacked on. The winning team is given a choice of questions either representing them or the other team. Once a category is selected and Greg reads the question, the team has 10 seconds to confer, and a correct answer wins the team a bonus $1,000. An incorrect answer gives the opposing team a shot at the question for $1,000. Apart from being tacked on, the $1,000 bonus round is pretty cheap, even compared to the $5,000 at play on Win Ben Stein's Money. If it were for $3,000, so each member of the winning team got an additional $1,000, then splitting the bonus $1,000, that would make sense. It could give the team a shot to win a good amount of money on the show. As a show itself, Verse is a pretty decent show. Sure, the game is a mishmash of gimmicks from 2 other Comedy Central shows wrapped around a mediocre format, but at least it's done well, and it's fine. So why wasn't this a success? Well, I have a pretty big theory about that, and it has to deal with the time slot it was given. According to ads, the time slot was 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. While some cable satellite systems started to air Comedy Central off of its own channel, such was not the case for many others. Some systems, including my own local cable system at the time at TCI, split airing Comedy Central and VH1. VH1 would air between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., while Comedy Central would get 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So for a chunk of the country, Versus was not seen. This in combination with most viewers knowing that they had the genuine article in Win Ben Stein's Money and kind of didn't want to see another show that's done the same vein. And because of that, the show was axed after 4 months on the air, ending its run on September 6th, 1999. So that wraps up this edition of 26 Weeks or Less. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Tell us your thoughts on the show and other shows you'd like to see covered on the series by commenting below. Also, thumbs up the video if you like it and share it on all the socials if you can. I'd like to give a big shout out to the fine folks, i.e. these people right here who support us on Patreon at patreon.com/gameshowgumbo. I'm Cindy Seidelman. We will see you next time for more short-lived goodness on 26 Weeks or Less. Bye, y'all.